My name is Tegan, and this is the story of the day my family tried to erase me. We were all gathered in the dining room of my parents' suburban house in Orlando, Florida. The place smelled like fresh coffee and lemon cleaner the way it always did when my mom was nervous. The long oak table, the one my dad had bought on sale years ago for only $400, can you believe it, was buried under neat stacks of folders, yellow legal pads, and a small glass bowl full of pens that no one was using. Sunlight came through the big window behind my brother, making the whole scene look softer than it really was. On one side of the table sat my parents, Daniel and Laura Miller, holding hands like they needed to borrow courage from each other. My dad's hair had gone almost completely gray, and my mom's lipstick was a little too bright, like she had tried to paint confidence onto her face. Next to them was Mr. Clark, the family lawyer, a tired-looking man in a navy suit who kept polishing his glasses on the edge of his tie. Across from me sat my sister, Amelia, in a fitted green dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment on my small house in Denver. Beside her lounged her husband, Mark, who had the kind of loud confidence money can't buy but ego can fake. On the other side of the table, near the window, my brother Ethan leaned back in his chair, spinning a pen between his fingers, pretending he didn't care about any of this. I sat in the middle, directly across from Mr. Clark, my notebook closed in front of me. I had already done the math, reviewed the documents, and planned my words. I knew more about what was in those folders than anyone else in that room. Still, my heart beat a little faster as I watched them. Mr. Clark cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "We're here to go over Daniel and Laura's estate planning, including the rental properties and—" He didn't get any further. Mark suddenly pushed back his chair and stood up like he was on a stage. "You know what?" he said loudly, raising his voice for dramatic effect. "I think we can save some time here." He placed a hand on Amelia's shoulder and grinned at my parents. At the inheritance meeting, my wife and I are very happy to say that Mom and Dad are giving all 10 rental houses in Florida to Amelia. Amelia giggled, tilting her head, basking in the attention. Mark turned his smile on me, and it sharpened like a knife. "Tegan," he added, putting fake sympathy into my name, "too bad. You're getting nothing." For a second, it was like the air went thick. I watched my parents' faces very carefully, waiting for them to correct him, to say, "Mark, that's not how this works," or even, "Let Mr. Clark speak." But instead, my mom gave a small nod, and my dad let out a weak chuckle, like he was embarrassed but not enough to stop it. Ethan snorted and shook his head, but he didn't say anything. Amelia clapped her hands once in delight, as if Mark had just announced she'd won a prize. It felt like the whole room bent around their excitement. The people who should have protected me were smiling, while someone else told me I didn't matter. Everyone cheered. Not loudly, not like a stadium, but enough. A few laughs, a couple of claps, a general sense of, well, that's that then. It was amazing how fast a family could decide who counted and who didn't when money was on the table. 10 rental houses, each bringing in over $1,200 a month, were, in their minds, already gone from me. I didn't flinch. I had promised myself I wouldn't. I had known something like this was coming for a long time. I had seen the way Amelia and Mark talked about the houses as if they already owned them, how my parents talked about me like I was doing fine on my own somewhere far away in the United States, not part of the core anymore. So I smiled. Not a big smile. Just a small, calm curve of my lips, like I knew a secret. And I did. "Dad and Mom," I said quietly, my voice cutting through the noise more clearly than a shout would have. I looked at each of them in turn. "You really don't know, do you?" Mark stopped mid-smirk. His shoulders tensed. My mom's fingers tightened around my dad's hand. Mr. Clark blinked and pushed his glasses up his nose, suddenly alert. Ethan's chair scraped against the tile as he leaned forward, eyes wide and confused, like he was finally realizing this wasn't going to be a simple celebration. "No, what?" my brother screamed. I didn't answer Ethan right away. His words were still hanging in the air, sharp and loud, but inside my head, everything went quiet. It always does that when something important is about to break open. The room in Orlando faded a little, and for a moment I was back in the old days, long before anyone cared about inheritance meetings or rental houses or how much money was in a bank account. We grew up in Jacksonville, in a small one-story house that always felt a bit too full. The living room was narrow, the kitchen was tiny, and the three of us kids shared 2 bedrooms down a short hallway. My parents used to joke that the walls were thin enough to hear each other breathe, and they weren't wrong. Back then, money was something my parents whispered about after they thought we were asleep. I remember hearing words like late fee and overdraft and next month through those thin walls. Dad worked at a small garage, fixing cars all day for not much pay. Mom worked the morning shift at a grocery store and sometimes picked up extra hours at the register when someone called in sick. They'd come home tired, smelling like oil and coffee and cheap soap. Still, they tried to make things feel normal. We had spaghetti on Fridays and watched the same old movies over and over because buying new ones was a luxury. I was the planner even then. When I was 14, I started keeping a notebook where I wrote down every bill date I heard them mention, every number they dropped in half-finished sentences. I didn't understand everything, but I knew this. We were always one bad surprise away from real trouble. By the time I was 18, I was done with that fear. I moved to Miami for college with a cheap suitcase, a second-hand laptop, and exactly $600 in my account. I worked mornings at a coffee shop and evenings at a small restaurant. I watched other students spend money like it grew on trees while I counted every tip and wrote down every expense in a spreadsheet on my old laptop. It was hard, but it was also the first time I felt like my life belonged to me. After I graduated, I got a job at a property management company. At first, I just answered phones and filled in forms. But I heard everything. I listened to landlords talk about rent, mortgages, tax breaks, repair costs. I watched people buy old, ugly houses, fix them up, and then collect thousands in rent every month. I saw the numbers. I ran them at night for fun, testing what-ifs. One evening, after a long day, I called Dad. I remember standing on my tiny Miami balcony, staring at the lights of the city. Dad, I said, have you ever thought about buying a rental house? He laughed like I had told a bad joke. With what money, Tegan? We're still paying off the roof on this one. I know, I said, but listen, if I save more, I can help with the down payment. We find something small in Tampa or somewhere cheaper than Miami. We rent it out. We share the work and the profit. It could change things. At first, he brushed it off. Then, he called back a few days later with a softer voice. Show me what you mean, he said. So, I did. I made a simple plan. I showed him how if we bought a small house for, say, $180,000 and rented it for $1,500 a month, we could cover the loan and still have some money left over after expenses. I told him I would put in the first $40,000 I had saved over years of long shifts and saying no to every nice thing I wanted. Mom thought it was too risky. She was sure the pipes would burst or the roof would cave in. I reminded her the roof on our own house had already done that. At least this time, I told her, we'd be the ones collecting rent instead of paying it. In the end, they agreed. We bought that first house together. The loan papers had 3 names on them. My dad's, my mom's, and mine. I went up on weekends to help scrub walls and paint cabinets. We watched that first tenant move in and hand over the first rent payment. It was only $1,450, but it felt like a door swinging open. From there, things grew. One house turned into 2, then 5, then 10, all in different parts of Florida. I handled the numbers, the emails, the contracts. I knew every payment date, every repair, every late fee. I knew exactly how much those houses were worth and how much work had gone into them. What my family forgot, sitting around that table in Orlando, was that I never stopped writing things down. I never stopped protecting myself with signatures and proof. They saw the houses as theirs. They saw me as the girl who moved away to Denver and did fine on her own. Ethan's shout pulled me back into the room. "No, what?" he asked again, his voice thinner now. What I knew and they didn't was simple. On paper, in the records that actually matter, I was not the forgotten one. I was the one holding the foundation of everything they were trying to claim. I let Ethan's question hang in the air for a moment. My brother's face was tight, his hands curled into fists on the table. Across from me, Mark still wore that half-smile, but his eyes had gone narrow. Amelia stared at me like I had just interrupted her party. My parents looked tired more than anything else, like they were hoping this would all go away if they stayed quiet. I turned to Mr. Clark. "Could you please take out the file for the first house we bought in Tampa?" I asked. My voice was steady. I had practiced this in my head all week. The very first one, the small one with the blue door. He blinked, surprised, but nodded. Yes, of course. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a worn folder. Papers rustled as he opened it and adjusted his glasses. This is the purchase agreement from 8 years ago. Can you read the names on the loan, please? I asked. He glanced at the page. It lists 3 borrowers, he said. Daniel Miller, Laura Miller, and Tegan Miller. The room went quiet. Mark's head snapped toward my parents. Amelia frowned, confused. Ethan stared at me like he had never seen me before. So you were on the loan? Mark asked, his voice sharp. So what? That was just to help them get approved. The houses are theirs, and they're giving them to us. Everyone knows that. That's what you think, I said calmly. Mr. Clark, can you take out the file from 3 years ago? The one I emailed you from Denver. It should be labeled with the same Tampa address. Mr. Clark's face changed. He flipped through the folder, found another document, and pulled it out. Ah, he said softly. Yes, this one. What is that? Amelia demanded. He cleared his throat. 3 years ago, Daniel and Laura signed a transfer of ownership for this property. It shows that they gave their share of the house to Tegan, in exchange for her paying off the remaining mortgage. The bank approved it. The title was updated. The house is in Tegan's name. My dad's shoulders slumped. Mom stared at the table. Mark shook his head hard. No, he said. No, that's not right. We didn't know about this. That can't count. It counts, I said quietly. I paid off what was left on that loan. With my own money. You remember that, Dad? When the tenant stopped paying, and the repairs got expensive, and the bank started sending letters? Dad swallowed. You said you could handle it, he murmured. You said you'd fix it if we signed some forms. I didn't think. You didn't think it meant I owned it. I finished for him. But that's exactly what it meant. I looked back at Mr. Clark. Now the other 2 early houses in Tampa, I said. The ones we bought next. Check those. His fingers moved quickly through the stack of folders. He pulled out 2 more sets of papers, scanned them, and then let out a long breath. It's the same pattern, he said. Your parents signed their shares over to you when you paid off the remaining loans. Those 3 houses are in your name alone now, Tegan. Ethan let out a low whistle. 3 out of 10, he whispered. You already own 3. I nodded. Yes. On paper, I do. And that's only the beginning. Mark looked like he wanted to break something. Fine, he spat. You pulled some trick with the first houses. But Mom and Dad still own the rest, and they said those are going to us. Right? He turned to my parents, searching their faces for support. Mom looked sick. Dad wouldn't meet his eyes. Mr. Clark cleared his throat again. I'm afraid it's not that simple, he said. Tegan, are you asking me to explain the trust documents as well? Yes, I replied. Please do. Amelia's chair creaked as she leaned forward. What trust? She asked, her voice rising. What is he talking about, Mom? My mother finally spoke. Her voice was small. We set up something with Mr. Clark last year, she said. Tegan asked us to. He said it would protect us. I thought. She shook her head helplessly. I didn't think it would come to this. Mr. Clark lifted a different folder. Last year, he said, Daniel and Laura signed documents placing the remaining 7 rental houses into a trust. The trust names Tegan as the trustee and main beneficiary. Your parents keep the right to receive income from the houses while they are alive, but upon their death, full ownership passes to Tegan. Amelia stared at him like she hadn't heard right. So, what does that mean? She asked. It means, he said slowly, those 7 houses are no longer part of Daniel and Laura's estate. Legally, they belong to the trust, under Tegan's control. They can't be given away in the will. I watched the truth sink in. First into my parents' faces, then into Ethan's, then, finally, into Amelia's and Mark's. Their excitement, their cheers, had been built on air. I folded my hands on the table and met my brother's wide eyes. "That," I said softly, "is what you didn't know." For a few long seconds, no one spoke. It was like the whole room in Orlando had stopped breathing. The air felt heavy, thick with shock and anger, and something else I couldn't name. My parents stared at the trust papers like they were written in another language. Amelia's mouth hung open. Mark looked like someone had just slammed a door in his face. Ethan just kept glancing between me and Mr. Clark, trying to catch up. "So that's it," Mark finally said. His voice was low but shaking. "You own everything? All 10 houses? You planned this behind our backs." I looked at him calmly. "I planned it in front of anyone who paid attention," I said. "I sent the documents. I paid the loans. I took the risk. You could have asked at any time. You never did." He opened his mouth again, but I'd given him enough attention. I turned to my parents instead.
"Dad, Mom,
"I didn't do this to steal from you. You were drowning in debt. The letters were piling up. I offered to pay everything off and protect you. That's what this trust is. Protection." Dad rubbed his forehead. "I thought," he began, then stopped. "I thought you were just organizing things. You always did understand the papers better than we did." Mom's voice was small. "I thought we could still decide later," she whispered. "I thought when it was time, we'd share. I didn't think it would be so final." "It's final on paper," I said gently. "But what we do with it as a family is still a choice. That's why I'm here. That's why I didn't just stay in Denver and send you an email." Ethan cleared his throat. "So what now?" he asked. "If the houses are already yours, what are we even doing here?" I took a slow breath. This was the part that had kept me awake at night. The numbers were easy. The feelings were not. "Now," I said, "I set the rules for what I built. And I do it out loud, so there's no more guessing." I turned to my parents first. "You two spent your whole lives one bill away from panic," I said. "That ends now. From the rental income, after taxes and repairs, I'll send you $5,000 every month. You won't have to think about late fees or choosing between medicine and groceries. We'll put it in a written agreement. It won't depend on who's mad at who that week." Dad's eyes filled with tears. "5,000, he repeated, like he didn't trust the number. "Every month." "Yes," I said. "Every month. For as long as you're alive. If the market changes, I'll adjust other things, not that." Mom shook her head. "We don't deserve that after." "It's not about deserve." I cut in softly. "It's about what I want to do. I can afford it. I choose to do it." Then I turned to Ethan. He sat up straighter, nervous. "You and I said, have never really had a clean deal. You borrowed, you promised, you slipped. Over and over. I still love you, but I can't keep playing that game." He nodded slowly, eyes on the table. "I know," he said. "I messed up. A lot. So here's my offer." I went on. "You will not get any share of the houses. Not now. But if you hold a steady job for 2 full years, stay sober, and show you can manage your own money, I will help you with a down payment for a small place. Up to $80,000. Somewhere you pick. We'll put clear conditions in writing. No tricks, no surprise changes." He swallowed hard. "You do that? After everything?" "Yes," I said. "Because I want you to stand on your own feet, not wait for me to rescue you forever. This is the last rescue. The rest will be your work." Finally, I turned to Amelia. Her eyes were bright with angry tears. Mark's arm was stiff around her shoulders. "And you," I said quietly, "will get nothing from the houses. Not now, not later. No rent, no trust, no silent slices of income." I held up a hand when she started to speak. "You cheered when you thought I'd get nothing. You were happy to see me cut out. I believe you when you show me who you are." "So you're punishing me?" she snapped. "I'm protecting myself," I answered. "I'll take my equal third of Mom and Dad's savings in this house, same as you and Ethan. That's fair." But the rentals? Those are done. Those are mine. I won't tie my future to your husband's ego or your idea of who is real family. For a moment, the only sound was Mr. Clark shuffling papers. He cleared his throat. Legally, he said, what Tegan is describing is all possible. We can put her promises into contracts. The will can cover the rest. It's unusual, but not impossible. Unusual, I repeated with a small smile. That's me. The meeting dragged on with signatures and dates and dry explanations, but the hard part was over. The truth was open. The masks were off. When it was finally done, I stepped outside onto the back porch. The Florida air was warm and heavy, the sky turning gold over the tops of the palm trees. I thought of the girl in Jacksonville, listening to her parents whisper about overdue bills. I thought of the young woman in Miami, counting tips and dreaming of one decent house. Now I had 10 rentals, a home of my own in Denver, and something even more important, a clear line where I ended and everyone else began. My family had tried to write me out of the story. They forgot something simple and powerful. I was the one holding the pen.